Right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Becca. I'm from Harlow College, and I have a colleague here, Louise Brown from Bucks College Group. Today, we will talk about the projects we've done for over the past 8 months. We've enjoyed every minute of it. First things first, before I introduce my colleague, I'd like to say massive thanks to everyone involved from all 3 colleges, from Harlow, from Capel Manor, and from Buckinghamshire Group. So thank you. Louise, over to you, please.
Great, thanks, Becca. So it's interesting to hear Lou talk about some of the themes that are coming out, because I think what struck me was that I think our intervention was one of these small acts leading to change, and I think that'll be another thread that you'll see come out. So as a 3 college groups, 3 colleges working within one CFEM network, we wanted to look at growth mindset and what kind of interventions we could put in place. So we all developed a questionnaire together, and we shared it with our students to find out where are they. So for our college, I was working with 3 teachers across our 3 different sites, and they gave the questionnaire to their students, and there were 138 students that completed it in total. In terms of the findings, Becca, if you could just put them all up, thanks. Back, I sort of grouped them into kind of broadly sort of positive and negative findings. These were all the sort of positive things. I think it showed to me that students had the potential or the starting point of a growth mindset. They knew that there was more than one way to, or they thought that there was more than one way to solve a problem. They thought that if you put enough effort in, you could succeed. They knew that they could improve in maths. They knew it was important to know lots of methods. There was kind of a lot of positive there, but equally there was negative. So we had, these were sort of broadly the results that we got. So students felt that they didn't like solving complex problems. They thought that maths wasn't their thing. And the thing that really struck me was that about them giving up when they got stuck. And we know that, we see that when we're marking papers, you know, they get to the back and they tell us, you know, I've just turned over the page. So I really wanted to try and trial something with our students that would help them to just to get unstuck. That was the phrasing that we kind of came up with, is about getting unstuck. So we wanted to see more students attempting those sort of problem solving 4+ mark questions that you get in the sort of last third of the paper. And whether or not they got full marks or not, we just wanted them to not get 0 marks. We wanted them to feel like they could have a go. So our intervention, we started with a lesson that was focused on getting unstuck. So we sort of scrapped the scheme of work. We just thought, okay, right, we're gonna look at this idea of getting unstuck. We use the growth zone model to get students starting points. And we put up a really nasty question and sort of just got students to say what their kind of gut reaction was. Where would they place themselves on the growth zone model looking at that question? And we sort of parked that. And then we asked students to talk about what happens when they get stuck. How do they feel? We did some work kind of finishing the sentence, when I get stuck, just so the teacher was aware of how they felt and how they behaved. And then we just thought, okay, in this lesson, we're going to get you to work on something, but it's not linked to the syllabus. It's not linked to preparing for our GCSE. We're just going to have a go at a problem. You're going to work in pairs. And it was a locked box problem. So we had some of these sort of combination cash boxes that had some sweets in it. And we got them to work together to solve the problem of opening the box. And then we pulled, from that, we drew out how did they approach that problem? What were the tools that they used to get unstuck? And we turned that into a visual resource. So this is an example of a poster that a pair of students created, thinking about all the things that they did to solve that problem and how they got unstuck. And then the sort of talking with the other students in their class about what they could do, and the teacher inputting as well about ideas that they had for getting unstuck. And that worked really well. And what we did from that lesson is that we had this culture ongoing from then of talking about getting unstuck. It's great to get stuck. It means that we're about to tackle a problem. Can you just go back, Becca? Thanks. We wanted to make the language really normal. It's fine to get unstuck, but look, we have these tools. We've done it before. We're going to do it again. So there was, after this single lesson, there was a part of every lesson where they focused on getting unstuck. They looked at a particular tough question. They might have looked at maybe 3 in a lesson where they worked on one together as a group. Then they might have worked on one in pairs, and then they sort of ultimately, hopefully, work on one on their own. And it was just all the time going back to this toolkit, using this language, and just normalizing the idea of getting stuck and getting unstuck. In terms of the impact, actually, I was going to say we did have there was a bit of an impact of COVID in delivering this project. We had a lot of staff sickness, absence, where teachers were then having to cover and merge lessons. So that did impact on them feeling like they could deliver this kind of lesson with groups that they didn't know. But still, that we did have an impact. So all of the 3 teachers involved kind of just anecdotally fed back that they felt that their students were attempting more of the complex questions and feeling more confident in class. We revisited the growth zone model at the end of the intervention, and we put up the same question again at the end and just asked them to rate themselves on how they felt. So in one, as I've got here, one group, 83% of students moved closer towards the green, which I think was brilliant. I've been analysing the whole cohort data, and I think about 1/3 of students felt some sort of positive change. But if you consider all we did was change the language, so to have any kind of positive impact, we felt was really good. The last thing that we did is we use heat maps with our students. They're just sort of question level analysis, red, amber, green, but they're a really good picture of where the group is at the moment. And we really wanted to move this sort of whole swathes of red that you get at the end of a paper into being more of a patchwork of yellow and green. And we have seen that. We did a mock sort of around Easter time, and comparing the group from where they were at sort of Christmas, New Year to where they were in that March mock. It's not all green, but it's not all red. And I think that's the positive that we take from that. So really small change on behalf of the teacher, not very resource heavy, not a big thing to deliver, but actually it did have a positive impact on students. And we're looking to implement this kind of getting unstuck lesson within our induction this year, so that we start the year with this language, and that we have the whole year to get to the point where they're then doing the exams in the summer and they are attempting all of those questions. So Becca's going to feed back about the 2 other projects, and is also going to pull out some of the recommendations that we've sort of gathered as a team as a whole.
Right, thank you, Louise. So, right, very quickly, Harlow College and Cape Mona College also taken the growth zone model, growth mindset messaging, and we looked at, well, how we can change our language, how we can change the little subtle messages that will hopefully help learners to change their mindsets towards mathematics. So before we've done any of that, we considered that if learners are largely functioning in the fixed mindset environment, it's going to be ineffective in a classrooms, because if they come in and say, well, we can't do anything anyway, so they come in, we've tried, we gave up, we tried, we failed, and we gave up. We also, this is just blurred, but the most important thing is overemphasis on teaching and mindset. Sometimes we get carried away with, all right, this is all about mindset, so let's just talk about mindset. But in fact, we leave out the high quality instructions and well thought out curriculum. So they have to go hand in hand. That's what we absolutely wanted to make it clear from the very beginning. So what we did, we had a pre-intervention mindset questionnaire, which is quite similar to very famous Carol Dweck's questionnaires. We wanted to know what was the mindset of our learners, and I would say all of you would probably guess what the results would have been at that point. Lessons were planned based on that, and we wanted to aim the students to think how they feel about mathematics, about their feelings. Will they see the problem? How do they feel about it? Are they terrified? Do they resent it? So we wanted them to make to think, because quite often we find they don't think. They just, as we were talking about last week, Friday, about the mathematical problems, they just do things with numbers. They don't think. We've embedded growth mindset language in every lesson. It was kind of infused mindset messages in every lesson, and we talked about mindset can change everything, and what does it mean to have a fixed and a growth mindset. We've talked about examples. We talked about taxi. There's a great examples of the London cab drivers, but the part of their brain grows. There was a big scientific experiment done when the part of their brain grows as they learn. They practice driving in the central London because they need to remember the streets. But then once they retire, they go back to the same level, the same size. We introduced them to the growth zone model. Louis talked about that, and we encouraged that logical approach to teaching and learning, and more importantly, peer-to-peer feedback. I think it was really important to make the students understand they're not alone in this. Others sitting next to them could also be in the same boat as them. And then we've given them post-interview questionnaires, identical questionnaires at the end of the term. What did we find? I've kind of alluded to this before. We found about over 90% of students had a fixed mindset with a bit of growth flavors to it. They were dipping in and out of those. We had 40% of the students that believed that the math was never going to change, no matter how hard they tried. That's quite a big amount of students, large number of students. This measure has been reduced to 25% after the intervention. 65% of the students, they thought that they made sense. So that was after the intervention. That was 38% of them was before intervention. So I think getting them to think about the problems presented to them has helped them to understand if the mathematics really made sense or not. And this is I probably should have put in the caveat. The hardest part was to maintain the growth mindset. We've achieved it to change it from fixed to growth in most cases, but the hardest part was to maintain it, because it was very easy to switch between, well, I can't do this anymore, from with a very small internal or external factors. Okay. So this was one of the examples Capel Manor College just presented the quite difficult question, really wordy, heavy on instructions. And the conversation took the turn of, well, they should explore why do they find it difficult? Because if they understand why they find it difficult, they can strategize more and think about, well, how do I break this one down? They've had lots of prompts from teachers. What does this topic cover? Identify the parts, and what do you need to know first? And there's a very good crossover between the growth mindset messaging, subtle messages, and the realistic math education, where helping the learners to make sense of a question. Where do we start and where do we finish? What else we can say? What they've told us. These are the excerpts from the students' interviews. We've conducted interviews individually, and I think they speak the volumes. I will summarize a few words later on at the end of this presentation, but I'd like to just present some of the quotes from the interviews. This was one of my learners. She was absolutely negative towards mathematics altogether. But with a change of attitude, she's seen her mock scores. She now believes that she can do it. More importantly, the messages, the changes in attitude has helped her to turn around in a way. This was another critical point where one moment they believed they could do it, but then they made a stupid mistake, and then everything comes down crashing on them. Very powerful quote, teacher telling me they believe in me has given me a boost I needed. And nobody has told us like this. They feel they're part of learning process. The conversations we've had with them, that make understanding that all students struggle. I think that was really, really that came out of the interviews we've had. So yeah. Very briefly, what do we recommend? Look, as Luis mentioned before, these are the small changes infuse your language with the growth mindset messages, make the learners believe that you believe in them and you can actually help them to achieve what they want to achieve. So the positive messages, they can play a vital role if done properly. I think keeping the mindset is the key. They can easily switch from backs to forward. We've seen this with the mock results. We've literally brought them up. They believed they could do it. They've done the mocks and were not as successful. Has completely switched them back into I can't do this kind of attitude. The message needs to feel genuine. Whatever you're telling them, it needs to feel genuine. One of the students told me, anyone can tell me I can do this, but do you really believe I can do it? Do you really mean it? It has to come from you, it has to feel genuine. Don't worry about grades and results. That are the side effects of what you're trying to achieve. Celebrate every effort, success or the failure. Celebrate the student mistakes and use them as learning tools. We can all make mistakes. Show them it's okay to make mistakes. We had the mistake of the day, for instance, and help them to build the resilience and the stamina. The learning should feel natural, anxiety-free, and you have to create a learning environment where every single learner really is free and feels nothing but happiness, really. And that brings me to close my presentation. Again, massive thanks to Luis and her team from Bucks College. Ayaz and Abul and Lynn from Capel Manor, myself from Harlow College, and my colleagues from there. So thank you, and I'll be with that. If any questions, I'll wait for it.